At this point, I'm done making life palatable for men, especially men who clearly don't respect women at all. So I look at him directly in the eye. He's like 3 feet away from me, and I say, that's disgusting. This is how women get harmed, is letting this behavior slide. It's too many men making too many jokes that they think, now it's okay. Now I can get away with a little more, a little more, a little more. And then you have a family annihilator.
When men say men are protectors, and those of us that are in the know say, who are we protecting women from? Or who are we protecting children from? And everybody has to say, well, other men more than likely. That's the part that I want to focus on. I want men to focus on not being the threat to begin with, not being the predator to begin with. Trigger warning. I just want to let you guys know this video is sensitive. It has a story or stories about child abuse and things of that nature. So of the sexual kind. So I just wanted to put that out there and just give everybody forewarning, because this is gonna be a tough one to get.
As a kid, I used to commit felonies on purpose as a source of protection from the abuse I faced at home.
All right. When I was 5 years old, I started to get molested by my uncle. And over the course of the next 6 years of my life, I was molested by more than 5 men. So when I was 7, I broke into a church and I got charged with a felony and put on probation. And when I got put on probation, all the men that were molesting me went away. And so when I got off probation, they all came back. And so I went and broke the law again.
I wonder if him being put on probation, the reason why they went away was because, like, he had more eyes on him. There was always somebody watching him, making sure that he didn't do anything, but it would still play a role. They could still get caught up because they were always watching him. He always had to go report to somebody. He always had to go talk to somebody, an authority. So maybe that's why it was happening that way. But that was just very interesting right there. I was just like, oh, okay. And these dudes were very calculated.
I got put on probation again. So my whole life, I continued to go out and break the law. I would purposely go out and catch felonies because this is how I protected myself. My mother didn't care. I didn't have any other family members. And so to protect myself from the abuse, that's what I would do. And I told on my uncle, and his threats came true because he would tell me as a little kid when he was molesting me, if you tell anybody, I'll have to hurt the whole family. And while he didn't hurt the family like he thought, when I told on him, he went to prison and my whole family fell apart. We no longer went to grandma's house. There was no more aunts, no more uncles, no more cousins. Everybody blamed me. It was my fault. And it turned me into this reclusive kid. And it made me a target in school because I had no self-confidence. I was horribly bullied going through school. And by the time I was 15, I had 10, 12 felonies on my record. And so the judge was sick of me and bound me over to adult court. And when I went in at 16, he sent me to prison. And I had never been taken away before. I had never been locked up. So I didn't know what was coming. And I was just this abused kid from the country. And they put me in prison when I was 16, and I was raped the first week I was there by 2 men at knife point. And it turned me into a savage. And
Real quick, I just want to point out something. And we have to do it. Can't help it. But if you notice in this story, all of these problems, the people who are perpetuating these issues the most, by far, are men. And this is what I talk about all the time when I talk about how men are the most violent, men are the most abusive, whatever the case may be. Now, I know that a lot of y'all heard that man say, my mom didn't care about me, right? Let's look at mom and let's take mom's story in a vacuum. Let's say that she herself wasn't abused by men and that maybe that had led her to abandon her own child, not care, not be able to take care of them, right? Let's say his mom just under her own will just chose not to, care about her own son. Fine. Cool. I'll accept that. That's one woman versus his his uncles, multiple uncles, and the men around him, multiple men, versus the system that's set up by men, a male judge more than likely, the men that raped him in prison, and we are only halfway through this story. So you look at all of these men right now. What I want to say is this. Oh, I'm sorry, and I forgot to mention his father that wasn't there. So what I want to say is this. Even if his mama didn't care about him, we never would have really known how little she cared about him had these men not done what they did to him. That's the thing where I want men to start to take accountability. I really need men to recognize that it's one thing to blame a person for making a bad decision. It's one thing to blame a person for not protecting a person when they can. I get all of this stuff. But when people say that men are protectors and then we respond, right? When men say men are protectors and those of us that are in the know say, who are we protecting women from? Or who are we protecting children from? And everybody has to say, well, other men more than likely. That's the part that I want to focus on. I want men to focus on not being the threat to begin with, not being the predator to begin with. That's the most important part about this story. If none of these men were predators and they just would have left this little baby alone, even with his mama who didn't care less than fine, that would the only thing he would have to worry about, not the only thing, but pretty much the only thing he would have to worry about at this point would be a mama that maybe didn't care about him. And she would have shown it in different ways, I'm sure. Maybe she never picked him up from practice on time and never went to his basketball games or his football games or whatever. And that's bad. Definitely that's bad. And that's something that he would need to probably go to therapy for and unpack. And I'm sure it would affect his life. But it ain't this. It ain't this. This is crazy. And this is stuff that men overwhelmingly do. Overwhelmingly, like 90+% of the time, these stories are us, not women, not girls, us, men, boys, doing it to boys and men. And it ain't because of our gender, right? It ain't because of our sex, I should say. We're not born this way. It's not that. We're socialized to be this way. We're socialized to be this way.
I became this very violent human being because that became my source of protection. And I no longer feared physical pain. I no longer feared felonies. I had resolved that I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison. And when I was 21, they opened the doors and sent me back to the world with $75 and 3 condoms and no parole, no probation. And I didn't know how to protect myself anymore from the monster that I had become. And so I started to rob people and I started to hurt people. And for 20 months, I was just a horrible stain in the world. And I was ultimately convicted of 15 more felonies and sent back to prison for 12 more years. And it became a safety net for me to get into trouble, to catch felonies. I felt like that's what my life was worth. And ultimately spent 18 years. So yeah, that was my secret.
Can I ask where you're at today?
Today, I'm super happy. I was given 5 years in solitary confinement while I was in prison, and I met a Muslim man who changed my life. He became my mentor, taught me about processing emotion, taught me about forgiveness of others and myself. Taught me about kindness and compassion and love, and I've dedicated my life to that ever since. I am so whole and healed, and I spend my life helping people do it.
What advice would you?
Real quick, this is what I want to point out too about this man. Shout out to him. I've seen him before. I know he has like a book on this. Pretty sure he has a book. I've never read it, but I know him. I've seen him before. He has a book he wrote about all of this. But anyways, the thing that I love most about listening to testimonies from people and from men like him specifically is because if he can overcome it, then what is our excuse? Because I ain't been through a 10th of the shit that he went through, a fraction of it. I ain't gonna even hold you. And I grew up pretty fucked up. But what he just described that's way, way beyond me. I don't know if I could have survived it. But he did, and he's here. And he said he's a whole human being. So if he can become a whole human being, why can't we? And he is talking about how to do it. He's talking about how you have to process your emotions. That was I love that. He's saying you got to process your emotions, right? Absolutely. These are things that men need to learn how to do, but it's so frustrating because you can see the only reason why we're not doing it is because we are actively trying to not do it. We don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. You don't want to be a better person. Him being a better person, though, it saved his life. I think, and I don't want to be like, I wish every man had that, that much riding on becoming a better person, but he had a lot riding on him becoming a better person. You know what I mean? I understand that, no doubt about it. But it shouldn't take that much. It sucks that it takes men very extreme conditions to want to change and grow. That's the thing. And I know that when I talk to women about this stuff, women get so frustrated because they see men who have nothing but opportunity to become the best version of themselves, not try to do so, while women are like fighting to become the best versions of themselves. There's all types of like obstacles thrown in their way, and they're still overcoming that. And they're like, oh, I got to level up. And yeah, I get it. Oh, whoop. They threw that at me. And oh, damn, I got hit. I got knocked down. Let me get back up. But men are like little to no obstacles in front of them, stopping them from being the best versions of themselves. And I'm not talking about this man. He had every obstacle in his way. But I'm saying like most of us, like I have no obstacles in front of me when it comes to becoming the best person I could be. There's literally, I mean, society is always trying to socialize me to be closer to him than I am to myself now, but closer to the person he was than I am to the person that I am right now. But there's no obstacles. There's nothing really stopping me from doing so. There's definitely no person or no persons stopping me. There's nothing but space and opportunity. And it's just that men need to make a concerted effort. And this is why me personally, I like to give my testimonies when I can. And I always try to like weave in my own personal experiences. It's not to censor myself at all. I like to do it for the same reasons that he's doing it. I like to show men that, and I'm not comparing myself to him because again, I haven't experienced a fraction of the things that he went through, but I did experience a good amount of trauma, a good amount of abuse. And I've also dished out a good amount of trauma and a good amount of abuse, right? To people around me, my family members, whoever. And it doesn't work unless you're being honest. None of this works unless you're being honest. If you're trying to present as this perfect human being, then it doesn't work. It's not going to go anywhere. So me personally, I share my stories, I share my testimonials when I can, because I want to be a part of men. I want to be like, I want to be a part of the group. Like, yo, bro, understand that I too struggle with that. Understand that I'm not perfect. I go through that still too. Like I told a story yesterday about how, I was being combative with my wife and pushing back or whatever. Like I tell those stories on purpose. I could hide that. I could act like I could get on here and do what I feel like the vast majority of creators in my space personally do, especially the men. You never hear about them. You never hear about what they're doing at home. You never hear about the things that they've done in their past. You always hear about them talking from this position of like, you're terrible, man. Like, and that's not where I'm at. I'm saying we are fucked up. Even though I've never done anything like those men that, molested him. I've never done anything like that to anybody, but it's still the collective. I've still played a role in it somehow, some way. I've run cover for men. You know what I'm saying? Like before when I was younger or when I was, in my early 20s, I've definitely been on that like, I don't believe he did it. That woman lying. Like I'm sure I've said stupid shit like that before, no doubt about it. So I've been a part of the problem. Absolutely. Have I done that? Absolutely not. But have I been a part of the problem? Yep. So you take ownership so you can grow, so you can become a better person. We have to stop being afraid to take ownership and take accountability. That's the first step. That's the first step, not the last step.
I am so whole and healed, and I spend my life helping people do it.
What advice would you give to any boy or man going through any similar experiences you went through?
Speak. Tell somebody. Right? Our voice is our healing mechanism. Our voice is what can save us. It's what can stop the abuse. Speak, say something. Tell anybody that you can. There's a lot of boys going through it. And I just want to, if I could, I'd heal the world, right? And so I hope that my life and my story are somehow help, right? Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Man, if you can speak up, absolutely speak up for the people that are suffering, but also for the people around the people. If you notice, if you see something, say something, we know that. But men also, we need to start taking accountability. We really need to start holding other men accountable, or helping other men to hold themselves accountable, holding men responsible for the things that they do. Stop excusing problematic behavior. Stop excusing things like men making jokes and men talking, saying disgusting things about women and children. We really need to start addressing that stuff and standing and fighting back and pushing back against that. It's really important. And when I talk about men taking accountability and like trying to really talk to other men, this is why I'm so big on this. This is what my platform is all about, right? It's all about men taking accountability and men holding other men responsible for the things that they say and do, starting with yourself. So first thing I do is I take accountability for the things that I've done. I take responsibility for the things that I've done. But then after I do that, after I check myself, I go check and make sure everybody else is doing the same thing. And this is an example of how men are falling short and how we are not actually taking accountability and stopping the problematic behavior that leads to the things, to the destructive behaviors that happened to the gentleman that spoke in the previous video. His uncles doing the things that they did to him, a lot of that was formulated. A lot of those tendencies and those characteristics, there were signs of that happening with other men. When you joke about it, when you say stupid stuff, when you say disgusting things, you're making misogynistic jokes. That's happening within the locker rooms or whatever, the proverbial locker rooms and all of that stuff, right? That locker room talk. That's where it starts. It starts as a thought, and then it turns into an action. So the thoughts lead to actions. Thoughts lead to words. Words lead to actions, right? That's what I'm saying. This is an example of how men are falling short. This is the opposite of what we need to be doing.
2025. So I have my head on a pretty constant swivel looking for men who are going to be disrespectful and who might be dangerous for me as a woman. And today I had an experience with a group of men outside of a UPS store in Fort Lauderdale on Oakland Park around 2 o'clock Friday afternoon. If you're in the area and you're married to a man, maybe listen for this one. So I was outside of my car working on taping up some packages to bring into UPS, and there's a group of 3 men standing outside the front door of UPS talking really loudly together, and they look like friends. And the one of them who's primarily doing the talking is talking about how his wife is just incompetent. Can't do anything right. She keeps hiring horrible people for their house renovations. She's wasting his money. She's making mistakes. The men are all laughing. They're like, hee hee ha ha. Yes, your wife is so stupid. So funny. And then the one who's been doing the talking starts talking about somebody else, a service provider who's trying to do something for his house, who wants his business. And he says really loudly, the only way she's coming into my house is if she's naked. This is a separate person from the wife he was just disrespecting. This is a different woman, assumedly trying to do a job for him, who's being sexualized by that man. And at this point, I'm done making life palatable for men, especially men who clearly don't respect women at all. So I look at him directly in the eye. He's like 3 feet away from me, and I say, that's disgusting. And he like shrugs it off. They all giggle a little. They clearly think I'm gonna drop it. And I say, no, that's a horrible way to speak about women. Why do you feel so comfortable doing that? And he looks at me, and the other guys look at me, and they're like starting to walk away from each other. They're disbanding.
The reason he felt so comfortable doing that was because the men around him normalize it. The men around him don't say anything. The men around him don't challenge him. So then when these men go out and that man does something heinous to his family members or does something heinous to a stranger or himself, then what do those men say? Oh, that guy was crazy. Oh, Bill was just a nudge or whatever. No. You didn't play any role in that. You didn't play any role in that. You had nothing to do with that. You didn't see any signs. You didn't say something. You didn't speak out against it. Interesting.
A little gal group. The gossip sesh is over now. I've ruined the vibe. The guy who's doing most of the talking clearly does not give a fuck what I have to say. He walks away. He's laughing the whole way. He thinks this is so funny. But his other two friends had to walk directly past me between my car and another car, and I was standing next to my passenger side, so I was standing in that alley to get to their car. One of the men walks right next to me, like less than 6 inches from me, and I look at him and I say, "That's disgusting. That's despicable behavior." And he looks back at me and says, "I didn't say anything. You didn't hear anything come out of my mouth, right?" And I said, "Okay, if you don't agree with the way he was talking, hold your friend accountable. Why aren't you holding him accountable for that? If you don't agree with what he's saying and you don't condone that, why'd you laugh? Why didn't you stop and say, hey, don't talk like that?" At this point, he's actually being pretty receptive. He's still like 6 inches from me. These are all big men, by the way. They're like in their 50s, 60s. They all have tattoos. They're like,
Men are deathly afraid to challenge other men, and not just because they're afraid of like physical, altercations ensuing. They're afraid to get excommunicated from the cult. So they won't say anything to another man for fear of that man being, that man calling them out and flipping it around and being like, "So what are you, man? You gay or something? You out here protecting women?" That's how men are flipping on you. "Oh, you must want to be a woman, huh?"
big men. And he says, "You know what? I will next time. I will hold my friend accountable." And I say, "I really hope so. I really hope you do, because that is a horrible way to speak about women, and you can't be letting that slide." I said, "You cannot let those conversations happen and not say something. That's how women get harmed." So he nods at me. He like walks.
That's how children get harmed. That's how women and children get harmed by these conversations. They start with these. I'm telling y'all, this is where they start at. You wonder how we get to the place of a little 7-year-old boy getting molested by his uncles and stuff. It starts in these dumbass circles with these types of men. That's where it starts.
Walks away. He's like, "Okay, settled that. We're fine." Gets in the car with his friend. They're in the same car and they're like loudly saying like, "Oh, that guy's crazy, right? What's wrong with him? Like, we don't agree with that guy." But they never said anything to the guy. He left. He went away in his car. I do hope that maybe next time they think a little bit harder about the way that their friends are talking about women and not just laughing at that speech and that behavior. But I also just want to share, this is the way that men talk about us when they don't think that we're listening or when they don't think we're around. Your husband might be saying you're an incompetent idiot and then sexualizing another woman in the very next sentence.
100, without a doubt, that's how a lot of men, tons of men talk like that. Tons of men.
You're a woman in Fort Lauderdale and your husband is like a 6 foot, maybe white guy in his like 50s, 60s, and he was at UPS on Friday at like 2 p.m. just saying he's talking about you like that. And if you're not that woman, but you know your husband is laughing at that kind of talk or having those kinds of conversations, sit him down. This is how women get harmed, is letting this behavior slide. It's too many men making too many jokes that they think now it's okay. Now I can get away with a little more, a little more, a little more. And then you have a family annihilator. And everyone says, how did it get this bad? That's how it got that bad. Because we let it slide for so long. And
She's not, I know. That's what I'm saying. When we have these discussions, so many people, a lot of people think that that's not the case. Like, oh, I don't see how that could be. Where do you think it comes from? You know what I'm saying? You think people just wake up one day and all of a sudden they're freaking just like, oh, I'm going to abuse some children. I'm going to abuse some women. Like, no, fool. No. And those types of people are always testing. They're testing the system for weaknesses. Those jokes, that's them testing the system for weaknesses, seeing where they can get in at, who will allow it. They tell the joke and okay, that one got off. Okay. And like then they a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. They just keep going and keep going and keep going. It is very much linked to this type of behavior. The extreme behavior is very much linked to this type of behavior the vast majority of the time. That's all I wanted to say. And I think, like I said, I think this perfectly just ties in with the first video, because I want men to start to nip this thing in the bud at the root instead of waiting until the end and having to apologize. Why don't we stop it before it starts? So we got to start holding each other accountable, man.